My mother-in-law didn't want me at her birthday party. Too bad I was the one who made the reservations. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You don't have to come to my birthday. I'd like it to be family only." What would you do if your mother-in-law made it clear you're not considered family? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Hi, my name is Dana. What you're about to hear is something I never thought I'd go through. It's a story about boundaries, betrayal, and sweet revenge, with a classy twist. I married into a family where love was conditional, appearances meant everything, and my mother-in-law, Diane, ruled like a queen. She's the kind of woman who serves smiles with judgment, and every compliment comes with a sting. For the first few years, I kept my head down. I played the role of the grateful daughter-in-law, even though Diane always made me feel like I was just the woman who stole her son. She never said it outright, but she didn't have to. The real blow came 3 weeks before her 60th birthday. I had already made the luxury restaurant reservation, her favorite place no less, and sent out the invitations. I even organized a customized cake, complete with edible gold detailing. It was supposed to be a surprise. But then she called. "Hi, Dana. I just wanted to say, you don't need to come to the party. It's going to be an intimate family thing. No apology, no guilt, just rejection." So I smiled, swallowed the lump in my throat, and made a new plan. Because if she didn't want me there, she certainly didn't expect what I was going to do next. And no one, not even her precious son, saw it coming. To everyone who's clicked to watch, thank you for being part of this growing community. Your support means everything. Before we begin, I'd be glad to know that my story gets to people in different parts of the world, so please let me know where you're watching from. Let's begin. Diane's rejection stung long after I hung up the phone. Her voice, cool, clipped, final, echoing in my head. "You don't need to come to the party. It's going to be an intimate family thing. No apology, no warmth, just a door slammed shut in my face." I sat on the couch, staring at the notepad where I'd jotted down details for her 60th birthday. Reservations at La Belle Vie, her favorite upscale restaurant, a custom cake with edible gold, invitations sent to her inner circle. I'd poured weeks into planning, thinking maybe, just maybe, this would be the gesture to crack her icy wall. Instead, she'd made it clear, I wasn't family, not to her. From the start, Diane had treated me like an outsider. When I married Ethan 3 years ago, she'd smiled at the wedding, but her eyes were sharp, her words sharper. "You married him, Dana," she'd said at the reception, her champagne flute raised. "You didn't marry all of us." I'd laughed, forcing a smile. "Well, I thought it was a package deal." Her lips twitched, but there was no warmth. Ethan brushed it off. "She's just protective." But Diane's subtle digs never stopped. My job as a graphic designer was cute but unstable. My cooking was fine, but not what Ethan's used to. I kept my head down, played the grateful daughter-in-law, hoping she'd soften. She didn't. Now, her uninvitation burned, a fresh wound on top of old scars. Ethan was out of town for work, oblivious to the party plans I'd kept secret to surprise him too. I could have called him, told him his mother had crossed a line, but what would that do? He'd defend her like always, and I'd be left swallowing my hurt. Instead, I paced the living room, the weight of her words fueling something new. Not just pain, but resolve. Diane thought she could erase me from her perfect night. She was wrong. Have you ever been excluded by in-laws for no reason? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments. I'd love to know I'm not alone. If you're new, hit subscribe. This drama's just getting started. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, the restaurant's confirmation email staring back at me. I could cancel it all, the reservation, the cake, the floral centerpieces, and let Diane's intimate family thing fizzle into whatever potluck she'd scraped together. But that felt too easy, too small. She'd humiliated me, but I wasn't going to slink away. I was going to show her exactly who she'd tried to dismiss. I kept the reservation, the cake, everything. Then I got to work. I tweaked the guest list, adding names Diane wouldn't expect, colleagues she'd mentioned in passing, a distant cousin she hadn't seen in years. But the real move, the one that made my pulse race, was a call I placed that afternoon. I scrolled through my contacts, found a number I'd saved but never used, and dialed. "Hi, Aunt Louise," I said, my voice steady. "It's Dana, Ethan's wife. I think it's time for a little family reunion." Louise, Diane's older sister, hadn't spoken to her in over a decade. Ethan had mentioned it once, a falling out over their parents' estate, bitter words, and a rift Diane refused to mend. Louise lived an hour away, quiet, unassuming, the opposite of Diane's polished veneer. "Dana?" Her voice was warm, surprised. "I didn't expect to hear from you." "I'm planning Diane's 60th, I said, choosing my words carefully. "She doesn't know I'm inviting you. I think she'd be surprised." Louise laughed, soft but knowing. "Surprised is one word for it. You sure about this?" "I'm sure," I said, a smile creeping into my voice. "She deserves to see her family. All of it." She agreed to come, no hesitation. I hung up, my heart pounding. Inviting Louise was a risk, a wild card Diane wouldn't see coming. What would she do when her estranged sister walked in? Would she fake a smile or crack under the weight of her own pride? The open loop hung there, thrilling and tense. I wasn't just throwing a party anymore. I was setting a stage, and Diane was about to face a spotlight she couldn't control. I spent the next few days finalizing details, my hurt sharpening into focus. I called the restaurant, adding a private room for extra guests. I confirmed the cake, its gold detailing a nod to Diane's love of extravagance. Every step felt like a chess move, deliberate, calculated, deliberate. Diane thought she'd excluded me, but I was the one holding the cards. Ethan would be back the day of the party, and I hadn't told him about Diane's call. Would he side with her, or see her for what she was? The tension coiled tighter, the stakes higher than ever. I wasn't just the daughter-in-law anymore. I was Dana, and I was done playing small. Diane's birthday was going to be unforgettable, for reasons she'd never expect. The call with Aunt Louise left my heart racing. Her agreement to attend Diane's 60th birthday party, a spark that could ignite the whole night. I'd kept the restaurant reservation, the gold-detailed cake, the floral centerpieces, and added unexpected guests, Diane's distant cousin, a few of her old colleagues. But Louise was the wild card. Diane had uninvited me with that cold, intimate family thing line, thinking she could erase me from her perfect celebration. But I was rewriting the script, and the stage was set for a night she'd never forget. A few days later, digging through old emails to confirm the guest list, I stumbled on a message from Ethan's cousin, tucked away in a forgotten thread. It was vague but loaded. Diane never forgave Louise for the inheritance fight. That's why they cut ties 15 years ago. My breath caught. Inheritance? Ethan had only mentioned a vague falling out over their parents' estate, but this hinted at something deeper, a secret Diane had buried. I called the cousin, keeping my tone casual. "What happened with Diane and Louise?" I asked. She hesitated, then spilled. Their mom left a chunk of money to Louise, not Diane. Diane thought it was unfair, said Louise manipulated their mom. They fought, and Diane shut her out. Hasn't spoken to her since. The words landed like puzzle pieces clicking into place. Diane's pride, her need for control, it wasn't just about me. She'd exiled her own sister over money, and now she was trying to control her narrative by keeping me out too. What would happen when Louise walked into that party? Would Diane's polished facade crack? I leaned into the plan, my resolve hardening. I confirmed Louise's attendance, adding, "Bring a +1 if you want." She chuckled. "You're stirring the pot, Dana." I smiled. "Just serving dinner." I also invited a few others Diane wouldn't expect. An old family friend she'd drifted from, a former neighbor who knew her before her queenly airs. Each name was a quiet jab, a reminder that her intimate family thing wasn't hers to dictate. The tension spiked because Ethan still didn't know. He was due back the morning of the party, thinking I'd been uninvited and wasn't going. I hadn't told him about Diane's call or my plans or Louise. He'd texted me from his trip, oblivious. "Sorry, Mom's being weird. You okay?" I'd replied, "I'm fine. See you soon." But fine was a lie. I was a live wire, balancing hurt and strategy. Would Ethan be angry when he saw what I'd done? Would he take his mother's side? Or mine? The uncertainty gnawed, but I pushed it down. This wasn't about him, not yet. If you had the chance to flip the script on someone who disrespected you, would you take it or let it go? Hit the like button if you'd serve the revenge cold and classy, and drop your thoughts in the comments. If you're new, subscribe. This story's heating up. By the eve of the party, I was a mix of nerves and steel. I called La Belle Vie, ensuring the private room was ready for my expanded guest list. The cake was set, its gold details gleaming in the bakery's photos. I pictured Diane's face when Louise walked in, her carefully curated night thrown off balance. Would she fake a smile or lash out? And what about the inheritance secret? Would it surface, exposing her to the family she'd tried to control? I packed my dress for the party, a sleek black number, understated but sharp, nothing like Diane's flashy taste. I wasn't there to outshine her, but to stand my ground. Ethan would arrive hours before the dinner, and I'd have to face him first. I hadn't decided what to say. Your mom uninvited me, so I invited her estranged sister didn't feel like the right opener. The secret of my plan felt heavy, thrilling, dangerous. I was no longer the daughter-in-law who smiled through Diane's digs. I was Dana, holding the reins, and the party was my move. The open loop pulsed. How would Diane react to Louise? Would Ethan understand why I'd done this, or see it as betrayal? And the inheritance, would it stay buried or erupt, changing everything? I zipped my dress bag, my pulse steady. Diane thought she'd excluded me, but I was the one calling the shots, and tomorrow night she'd learn exactly who she'd underestimated. The night before Diane's 60th, I barely slept, my mind racing with the plan I'd set in motion. Louise's attendance, the expanded guest list, the inheritance secret I'd uncovered, it all hummed like a live wire. Ethan's flight landed that morning, and I dodged his questions with a vague, "See you at the party." He didn't know I'd been uninvited, or that I'd turned Diane's intimate family thing into a reunion she couldn't control. The open loop of his reaction, and Diane's, kept my pulse sharp, but I was ready. I slipped into my black dress, its sleek lines a quiet armor, and headed to La Belle Vie, where I'd rewrite the night on my terms. The restaurant glowed with soft lighting, chandeliers casting a warm sheen over the private room. I arrived early, greeting the staff, checking the gold-detailed cake, and ensuring my surprise guests were seated. Louise was already there, her silver hair elegant, her smile conspiratorial. "You've got guts, Dana," she said, squeezing my hand. I grinned. "Just balancing the scales." The air buzzed with anticipation as guests mingled. Diane's old neighbor, her distant cousin, people she'd never expect. I stood at the entrance, my heart steady, ready to face her. Diane arrived, her emerald gown shimmering, her smile poised for the cozy dinner she thought she'd curated. Then she saw me. Her eyes narrowed, her lips tightening as she stepped closer, her voice low but venomous. "You weren't supposed to be here." I met her gaze, my smile calm, unshaken. "Neither was Aunt Louise, but I thought it was time." Her face paled, her head snapping toward the room where Louise sat, chatting with a cousin. Diane's hand gripped her clutch, her composure fraying. "You had no right," she hissed. "I made the reservations," I said, my voice even. "I sent the invitations. I paid for the cake. This is my party, Diane. You're welcome." Before she could respond, Ethan appeared, his brow furrowed. "Dana? What's going on?" His eyes flicked between me and his mother, sensing the tension. I didn't answer. Diane's reaction was enough, her forced smile cracking as guests approached to greet her. Louise stood, her presence a quiet challenge, and Diane's eyes darted away, avoiding her sister. Then came the twist. Among the guests was Carla, a friend from my design days who wrote for a local social column. I'd invited her on a whim, mentioning the party's surprise element. She was there, notepad in hand, snapping photos, her smile bright. "This is quite the event, Dana," she said, winking. "The readers will love it." I hadn't planned for press, but the idea of Diane's carefully controlled image splashed across a public column, complete with Louise's return, sent a thrill through me. Diane didn't know yet, but her night was about to be a story she couldn't spin. The room buzzed, guests oblivious to the undercurrent. Ethan pulled me aside, his voice low. You invited Aunt Louise? Mom's gonna lose it. She uninvited me, I said, meeting his eyes. I decided who belongs here, including me. His jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. Not yet. The open loop widened. Would Diane confront Louise? Would Ethan take her side? Or mine? And Carla's column. How would Diane handle her family secrets going public? If you could flip the script on someone who disrespected you, would you? Hit the like button if you'd serve it cold and classy, and share your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe if you're hooked. This story's far from over. I stood tall, watching Diane force a laugh with a guest, her eyes darting to Louise. The party was mine, and the night was just beginning. Diane's forced smile faltered as she navigated the party I'd turned into a reunion, her eyes flicking toward Louise, who mingled with guests like she'd never been exiled. I stood by the entrance of La Belle Vie, my black dress a quiet defiance, watching her squirm under the weight of my plan. Ethan's confusion, "You invited Aunt Louise?" still hung between us, unanswered, while Carla, my reporter friend, jotted notes for her social column, unaware of the bomb about to drop. Diane thought she could control this night, but I'd set the stage, and the spotlight was shifting. The dinner began, chandeliers gleaming over tables laden with wine and appetizers. Louise, seated near the center, raised her glass during a lull, her voice clear and steady. "I'd like to say something," she said, her eyes locking onto Diane's. "It's been 15 years since I've shared a room with my sister. Diane didn't invite me to our father's funeral. I only found out about it from the obituary." The room froze. Glasses paused mid-sip, forks clattered, and whispers rippled like wildfire. Diane's face drained of color, her perfect poise crumbling as guests turned to her, eyes wide with shock. The inheritance dispute, Diane's fight with Louise over their mother's money, the secret that fueled their rift, was no longer buried. Louise had laid it bare, not with anger, but with a quiet truth that cut deeper. Ethan leaned toward me, his voice low. "Did you know she'd do this?" "I knew they had history," I said, my gaze steady. "Diane made her bed. Now she's lying in it." Diane forced a laugh, her voice shrill. "Louise, this isn't the place. Let's not ruin a celebration." "Ruin?" Louise said, her tone calm but piercing. "You've been hiding the truth for years, Diane. I'm just here to eat cake." The whispers grew louder, guests exchanging glances, Carla scribbling furiously. Diane's image, polished, untouchable, was fracturing, and I felt a pang of satisfaction, tempered by the weight of Ethan's silence beside me. Would he defend his mother, or see her for the first time? The open loop tightened. How would Diane recover? Would the column expose her further? I stayed composed, sipping my wine, watching the drama unfold. Diane had uninvited me, thinking I'd fade away, but I'd brought her past to her party. The tension pulsed, the night far from over. If you've ever seen someone's facade crack, what was it like? Share in the comments, and hit like if you're loving this classy clapback. Subscribe for more. Things are about to get messier. Louise's words hung in the air, and Diane's next move was anyone's guess, but I was ready for whatever came next. The air in La Belle Vie crackled after Louise's bombshell about Diane missing their father's funeral, the inheritance dispute now an open wound. Whispers swirled among the guests, Carla's pen racing across her notepad, capturing Diane's crumbling facade for her social column. I stood steady in my black dress, watching Diane's forced smile falter, her emerald gown no shield against the truth. Ethan's silence beside me was heavy, his confusion shifting to something sharper as Louise's words sank in. I'd turned Diane's intimate family thing into a reckoning, but the night was far from over, and Ethan's reaction was still an open loop, pulsing with tension. As dessert was served, the mood brittle, I noticed Ethan scrolling through his phone, his jaw tightening. He'd been quiet since Louise spoke, but now his eyes burned with something new, anger, not at me, but at the woman across the room. He leaned close, his voice low. "Dana, why didn't you tell me Mom uninvited you?" I met his gaze, steady, Would you have believed me? Or would you have said she's just being mom? He didn't answer, but his silence was enough. Then he showed me his screen, emails, forwarded from a cousin who'd been CC'd by mistake. Diane's words, sent while Ethan was away. Ethan, Dana's not right for you. She's holding you back. You deserve better. Another, divorce is hard, but it's time to think about your future. My breath caught, not from shock, but from the clarity of her betrayal. She hadn't just excluded me from her party, she'd tried to erase me from her son's life. Ethan stood, his chair scraping the floor, drawing eyes. He crossed the room to Diane, who was sipping wine, pretending the whispers didn't exist. "Mom," he said, his voice loud enough for the room to hear, "you crossed a line. This isn't just about Dana. This is about control." Diane's glass froze midair, her eyes wide. "Ethan, don't make a scene," she hissed, glancing at the guests. "A scene?" he said, his voice steady but cutting. "You uninvited my wife from your party. You sent emails telling me to divorce her. You don't get to play victim now." The room stilled, forks pausing, Carla's pen halting. Louise watched, her expression unreadable, while guests exchanged shocked glances. Diane's face flushed, her poise shattered. "You're misunderstanding," she stammered. "I was looking out for you." "No," Ethan said, stepping closer. "You were looking out for yourself. Dana planned this party. She brought everyone here, including Aunt Louise. You owe her, not me." Diane's eyes darted to me, then away. Without a word, she grabbed her clutch and stormed out, her heels clicking furiously. The door swung shut, leaving a stunned silence. Ethan returned to me, his hand finding mine. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't see it." "I know," I said, squeezing his hand. The open loop of his loyalty had closed. He'd chosen me, publicly, undeniably. "Have you ever had someone try to sabotage your relationship? How did you handle it?" Share your stories in the comments. Real talk is welcome here. Hit like if you're cheering this moment, and subscribe for more. The party continued, but Diane's absence and Ethan's stand shifted the air. Louise raised her glass to me, a silent nod, while Carla's column loomed, ready to cement Diane's downfall. What would Diane do next? The question lingered, but I stood tall, no longer the outsider. Diane's dramatic exit from La Belle Vie left a charged silence, her heels echoing long after the door swung shut. Ethan's public stand, calling out her emails, her attempt to sabotage our marriage, shifted the room's energy. Guests whispered, Carla's pen raced, and Louise's steady gaze met mine, a silent acknowledgement of the truth we'd unearthed. I stood in my black dress, Ethan's hand warm in mine, no longer the daughter-in-law Diane had tried to erase. The party continued, but the night's weight lingered, and the open loop of Diane's next move hung unanswered. I wasn't waiting for her to rewrite the story, though. I'd already claimed it. The weeks that followed were a quiet victory. Ethan and I leaned into each other, stronger than ever. Over coffee one morning, he looked at me, his eyes soft. "I should have seen it sooner," he said. "Mom's always been controlling, but I didn't think she'd go that far." "You stood up for me," I said, touching his hand. "That's what matters." We talked late into the nights, unpacking Diane's manipulations, the emails urging him to divorce me, her need to keep me small. It wasn't easy, but it was honest, and our bond deepened, built on a truth Diane couldn't touch. We laughed more, planned a weekend getaway, and for the first time, I felt like his partner, not just his wife navigating his mother's shadow. Aunt Louise became a surprising anchor. After the party, she stayed in touch, joining us for Sunday dinners with Ethan's cousins, her warm laugh filling gaps Diane had left. "I didn't expect to be back," she told me over tea, her silver hair catching the light. "You gave me that, Dana. You gave us all a chance to heal." Her stories, about their childhood, the inheritance fight, wove the family closer, minus Diane's rigid control. Louise wasn't bitter, just grateful, and her presence reminded me why I'd invited her, not just to unsettle Diane, but to reclaim what family could mean. Diane, meanwhile, went silent. No calls, no texts, no apologies. Ethan heard through a cousin she was embarrassed, holed up at home, dodging the social circle she'd once ruled. Carla's column hit the local paper a week later, a glowing write-up of the unforgettable party, complete with Louise's return and veiled hints at Diane's family tensions. It didn't name me directly, but the photo, a candid of me greeting guests, my smile confident, spoke volumes.